I have a Ms. Johnson, Dr. Rawls. I have a real interest in dyslexia. 20% of the population is dyslexic, and if you're dyslexic for life. It's seldom screened for, and seldom effectively addressed in most schools. Now, if you can't read, you learn to read grades 1 to 3, and you read to learn after grade 4. And our current system of screening doesn't start screening until grade 3 or 4. So we've somewhat predetermined a whole class of children to be poor readers. You and I both know that reading well is a prerequisite for most jobs that pay well. My wife has done screening for dyslexia within a prison system and found a very high incidence of those who are inmates read way below high school graduating level. Now, many of those whom you are attempting to reach, I gather, and thank you for doing so, have poor educational kind of background. They haven't graduated from high school. Intuitively, since there is a high incidence of dyslexia among those who drop out, they can't read, they get frustrated, they quit, then I would suspect that you may have a higher percent of dyslexics, particularly severe dyslexic, in your service population, more than the 20%, which is in the general population. So with all that to say, do either of your workforce centers screen for dyslexia upon entrance into your training program?
Senator,
Ms. Johnson, Dr. Ross.
Senator, I will address that first. So currently in our American Job Centers, that screening does not occur. We do work, and there's a physical presence of our partners in vocational rehabilitation. And so once that referral is made, they can then start to consider if there are some extenuating circumstances to help an individual prior to enrollment, prior to assessment. That is not a common skill set that a lot of the folks in our American Job Centers have, but we do rely on our partners to help us in that work prior to sending someone on to any post-secondary upskilling opportunities.
Do you have a sense of the average grade level of reading ability of someone who's in your job center? Do they read on a college level, a high school graduate at 8th grade or 6th grade?
It varies. It varies widely. I will tell you, it's not unusual for individuals that come in and take part in assessments before we apply our Title I funding to credential of skill training to have to retake those assessments or need services from our partners in adult education in the literacy space for measurable skill gains prior to moving on. That's not uncommon. And again, we see this particularly with individuals who may have been out of the educational space for some time, and particularly for those who do not have a high school diploma or equivalency.
Dr. Rawls, could you answer those two questions? Do you screen, and what is kind of the mean level of educational achievement among those whom you serve?
No, sir, we do not screen for dyslexia, but what we do strive to do is provide and be very proactive in any types of accommodations for students who are coming into our degree programs. I think something else that's very important for us is being so comprehensive that it's not just degree college programs, but it's also we provide the adult basic education programs, which provide the opportunity for students to start wherever and essentially in many cases learn to read while they're at college, but keep going further. We certainly probably could do a better job in screening and other forms of services, but our comprehensiveness allows for recovery, and I think that's part of the beauty of community colleges.
Do you have a sense of the percent of your incoming students who are very poor readers?
In terms of the definition of very poor readers, one of the things we've worked on is what we define as college ready, which then does look at the readiness skills of individuals that come in through various testing. Our state's been kind of a model in terms of testing around that, which certainly does get at reading skills. But it's one of the most difficult challenges we face in making those determinations.
Yeah, but no percent. Can you give me a percent of how many read below a high school senior level?
Well, if you did our college readiness years ago when I was system president, about 2/3 fell below that. The truth is, though, our testing was not very strong, and we were over-testing students. And I can't tell you specifically how many are falling below a third grade level. Still too many students come in not reading at the level they need to at college level, and that's why many students, but a smaller percentage, go into than used to years ago our developmental education, and we focus very much on that aspect of our college to make sure that they can catch up in a reasonable amount of time if possible.
Madam Chair, I'm over, so I'll concede after this or yield back my time in that if dyslexia is the #1 reason for poor reading or even illiteracy, and no fault to these folks, but we're not on a federal level encouraging the screening of dyslexia at every point along the way in which we're trying to capture these folks. I feel like we have program failure. And nothing criticizing these folks. They're doing God's work. Oh my gosh. It's just the children themselves who are being failed by a system which itself fails to go after this particular issue. With that, I yield back and I thank you all for your good work to our folks.